Hey people, this is probably going to make y'all hungry. You know that last movie I read down here, the end of 44:13 in Isaiah. In 14, it says, it says, in which he fells for himself cedars, and he takes the holm oak and the oak, and he strengthened for himself the tree from the grove. Braced up the tree in the grove with the oak, which the Lord had planted a pine, and the rain lengthened it, that it might be for men to burn, and taking of it he warms himself, and in burning they bake bread loaves upon it, and with the remaining he works out gods. And so is he talking about the remaining bread or the remaining wood that he works out gods, and he does obeisance to them? He made it a carved idol, and he bends to them. And so I haven't tried to read that yet, but in the Hebrew it uses a lot less words, and so I thought I'd look at this in the Hebrew. He cuts down for himself the cedars and takes the cypress and the oak, and he secures it for himself among the trees of the forest, and he plants a pine. And so it's not the Lord planted the pine, but he plants a pine, and the rain nourishes it. This word for nourishes, the godel, and gushes. This is the word that comes from in Noah's Ark when it rained, come a gush. And a godel is a screw. It looks like the ancient screw pump they're talking about. Godel is always the grate. It's the word they use for grate. But, godel is Arabic for screw. And with the letter meanings, I to make, G is to lift, D is through, to make lift through of. And so it sounds like a screw pump, and gushes from gushes my godel, MYGDL, my screw pump. And then they say in 15, and it shall be for a man to burn, for he will take some of it and warm himself. Yes, he kindles and bakes bread, and indeed he makes a god. And so it's the baker that's creating the god here. The baker creates God and worships it. He makes a carved image and falls down to it. And so, the letter T in all the languages meant writings, the mark. And in Egypt, they drew it as a bread loaf. They said this was their letter T. And so I figure out how they're getting bread from this LHM here. You see it says Lachem, and that's because they're reading these vowel points underneath that weren't there in the original. So he might have put a cam, or a cum. May have been an O in there. And so, and to bake is a waf. And so to bake bread is a waffle cum. And then AF, of, a waffle cum of, and then backwards, low, up, flow, and a waffle cum of flow, a flow of P and pull. Yeah, you bake waffles and you get a flow of people coming, a god, and this is reading with a LAL here. And so, a waffle is a god, and he bakes a god, a waffle. So it looks like they were worshiping bread, which it probably means they were obese. A lot of people that love bread, they usually put that weight on pretty quick. He works out gods and does obeisance to them. And so waffle is an English word, noun borrowed from the Dutch, to waffle, and as a verb means to smash. And they say the words, a flat pastry pressed with a grid and often eaten with butter, honey, syrup, the kind of things, whipped cream, kind of things that make you obese. He did obesities to them. He put butter, honey, syrup, cream on there. So waffle has some other meanings too. Flap, wave, wag, flutter, to braid, weave, or to talk foolishly. And in the Egyptian and most of the old languages, The other letter T, looks like the top of a loaf of bread or a pie. You would cut some slits in it, or you would put a mark on top of your loaf of bread. And what that does, you'd have a different mark per day. It tells how old the bread is. Every day it gets older, you got to mark that bread down. So I've been trying to figure out how they get bread loaves out of this artois. When every language in the Med, the bread is the pan. And I believe I got it figured out. And I believe that's what that says is artois. And it means, R3, the knowledge of the first three. And so it doesn't mean bread. It means the three ingredients of bread. The three must-haves to bake bread. You got to have grain, water, and yeast, baker's yeast. And this is the same three ingredients to make beer. The grain, water, and baker's yeast, just in a different proportion. So it gives a whole different meaning to when Jesus said, hyphen, it has been written, not by bread alone shall live. And so it gives a whole different meaning to live too, because it's not just live, but it's zesty, the zesty life. And zesty is not live, zesty is to live. To live does not mean survive. And so this doesn't mean bread. You can see down here, here's your bread, the panty. But this word here, the hyphen, when he said, and you see it at the end, that line 16, Isaiah 44, and he said, the hyphen, adieu moi hadi, farewell my sister, adieu moi hadi. And so this word hyphen, what you think is a hyphen is a tack. In the Navy, we don't call what you call a hyphen, we call it a tack. And like I say, when you see that tack, it means to read the next word backwards and forwards. The waffle come a flow of P-I-P-I-P-O-L, a flow of people. And it comes from sailors. Tacking, you can't sail upwind. In order to sail upwind, you have to tack. You have to go back and forth. You can't go straight into the wind. You tack. It means back and forth. This tack here means back and forth. When this only became a hyphen during the language change, you can see here, hyphenated. And they only started pushing this, around 1900. During this language change, they tried to change the meaning of hyphen. But a high fin, when you're Navy, a high fin, is a fin that's up high. And so a high fin is what you would call a quotation mark. And he said, the hyphen. These words are hyphenated, in a quotation mark. Adieu moi hadi. Hadi, that's your Hebrew word for sister. Adieu. Farewell, my sister. And so when Jesus says this, and hyphened geographity, that sounds more like mapping than it has been written. And okay if fart mono. It's okay if you fart alone. The zest the spice, having a strong, pleasant, and somewhat spicy flavor. But it's not pleasant. It's the zest of on their oppose, and all upon, upon the panty ramadi. That looks where your word remedy comes from. The remedy upon the bread, the remedy. Ek of for who men of through the stomach, the of. But he was taking this quote from Deuteronomy, where the bread is the manna. And the manna was the magic bread that fell from the sky. And nobody can figure out what manna is because it's not the bread. The bread was down underneath here, and it's matzah. That's your Hebrew word for bread right there. All backwards L, and then O-L-L, and then C-A-L, call, and then backward, cull, X-A-X. And all collects of matzah. And pie, the mouth have you itch. You got a itching for, a wanting for. In the mouth have you itch ye had from, H-A-D. had from. And you look over here in the Greek at the beginning of this, all the commandments is possessed. Possessed as in told as. And that's the New Testament word for Jesus. Possessed as in told as. You possess the in told as, the word. That means the same thing as then Jesus, tote. And you carry of the yes who's, and this is the IHS, the yes. That was the government that was telling you what you could do and what you couldn't. The yes, YES, and tote of the yes who's. Guess who's coming? It's the yes who's, the ones that are going to tell us how to live our life. The yes who's. And annex thee. They annexed thee is you. Annex is they took over your land. And tote is the yes who's, annex thee. The ones that took over your land and telling you what to do, your government. His then here come on. He's coming. Hypo to upon whom it aspire as the nigh. Under to upon whom it aspire has the nigh. I don't aspire to be one, under to hypo to, under to upon whom it aspire. Despires the nigh, the not. To a diabolo. The devil is through boil, is hot. A pot of diboil, and with a red face. And then this having fasted for days of 40 and 40 nights, this arrow means that in some Bibles it's written reversed. And so this isn't 40, it didn't rain 40 days and 40 nights, and nobody fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. This is 14, and it's the Tessa, the collector account too. The collector account too. You collect your paycheck, on the 15th and the 30th. On the new moon and the full moon is the Tesser. The new moon and the full moon, every 14 days. And so ain't nobody supposed to fast for 40 days, maybe 14 days max. And you see here, how they twisted the roles of Jesus and Satan, Jesus is the guy who has the power to tell you what to do when he annexes your properties. The tote of the yes who's annexed thee, has annexed you. His then here coming. Oh shit, here comes the law, man. And so I know my movies go all over, and it's because they twisted the language so much. It's every word we think we know is wrong. And a hyphen does not mean attack. A hyphen means a quotation mark. And he quote, and he hyphen. Adieu moi et hadi. So long, my sister. And so that makes me think it's talking about, the sun and the moon. And for a Tesser account, for 14 days, it comes before the sun. And for 14 days, it comes after the sun. He was hungry. At a new moon, there's zero moon, and it's waxing, coming afterward. It's waxing, it's getting fuller for 14 days. And for 14 days, it's fasted, it's waning. It wanes for 14 days, and it waxes for 14 days. All of the clean animals, you should take 7 and 7. 14 days to eat the ones that you should eat, the clean ones, to assure of their whose sign from Ish, Ish, the liking, was 2. And then 14 more of the birds of the heavens when fable high out. And in the Greek, those animals that are not clean, that's doo-doo. And you should burn it, the arson. And yet the jar, yet the day comer on, if to ego the Phago. You know, the Phago, that was the word in Genesis 3 when they were, thou shalt not eat. And the Phago vetting the fitting gin of the 14 count, of the collector account, come her as. You know, when the moon comes up before the sun, lets you know that the sun's coming. The 14 days of the comer as, and the 14 days of the Tesser account on Nuktas. To its ellipse upon to honors them, you know, at the height of the honors them, of oppose away the force up of. The force up of passes this gist, a location. So for all the flatties out there, thousands of years ago, all intelligent people knew about the ellipse of the moon. And this is what caused it to make it look like it's getting bigger and smaller. But when it's full, it's because it's on the opposite side of the sun, and it has both the sun and the earth pulling on it. It pulls in tight. It's coming at us when it's full and wanes away. And it pumps in and out. It's a big godel. It's a big water screw. A godel. You know, he plants a pine and gush my godel. You know, god of water, the moon. So I'm going to put this in this Pyadora folder. If you're not getting it, you watch them. And it's where I was reading in the Greek in Isaiah 44. And that should help make a little more sense of this. And then I'll get back to where I was, where I dropped off at, I think, 13. And I'll start reading through that Greek some more. Alright, I'm going to cut this off here. Good day.